thank you so much for coming back in today.
Yeah, of course.
How are you feeling today? I know you were having a little bit of morning sickness last week. How are you doing?
Yeah,
now?
so, as you know, you've been in this journey with me for the longest. I am 3 months pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
The morning sickness is getting to me, but, it's something that all women go through whenever they're pregnant. Of course, I know I've had 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, I just have anxiety and fear right now just because of this baby that I have. I'm finally in a place where I want to be at and working towards a goal that I didn't think I would ever meet.
Mm-hmm. And what is that goal?
That goal is just to be a better mom, to be healthy, to not go back to doing drugs again and being in that dark hole. Like, I have Arthur by my side, and he is a wonderful human being and helping me through this process and like learning the ins and outs of me and taking care of me with this child as well.
Is he still going to his Al-Anon meetings?
He is going, he's still going.
Good.
And so it's just seeing him doing that motivates me as well. And of course, the baby is motivating me. But I just can't help to think like anxiety is overtaking me right now.
So when you're anxious, like describe that to me. Like, what does that feel like? What does that look like?
I feel like the world is just against me.
Okay.
I feel like I've made it this far, but once I feel like I'm in a good place, something will hit and like crash, and I will go back to just wanting to go back just doing drugs and drinking again. And I don't want to do that necessarily just because I want to be a better mom for this child.
So is that what keeps you like out of that mindset?
I let it motivate me that way because I want to be a better mom for this kid, the least I can do, because I wasn't there for my other ones, and that's why they were taken away from me. That with this one that I have, I'm just like, I'm going to be the best that I can for you. But I can't help just to think, what if I do fall back into that place? What if I do like see something that I used to do and want to go back to that?
Well, how have you've been sober for 6 months now, right?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So when you've had these like thoughts, throughout these 6 months, and this isn't your first time like trying to be sober, but you said that this is like the longest amount of time that you've been able to be sober since like you were 18? Okay. So like what is different for you like now than before in terms of like being able to stay on this like 6 months of sobriety? Like what's kept you motivated? What's kept you engaged?
I feel like the people that I've surrounded myself with, like you of course have seen me at my lowest and at my highest. And, you've never given up on me. I have Arthur who, is going through Al-Anon as well. And it's just like having us leaning on each other is very helpful. As you know, like both of my parents, they're mom's not in the picture, dad died. But I do have my grandmother who like is still supporting me even after all the bad that I've done. And, family is so quick to cut me off just because of that, but she has always stuck by my side. And, with me being 6 months sober, I have my sponsor. They're helping me, I'm on the 3rd step right now, which is a big deal. And I think that like with all the support that I have is like helping me and staying sober, because this is the longest that I've been sober. And I think the difference was just, not having anybody to having everybody now.
Yeah, so I think, or like what I'm hearing is that something that's different from you now kind of than in the past is that you do, not only do you have supports, but you have healthy supports. And you have people in your life who are like being supportive, encouraging, motivating. And like you said, your relationship with Arthur is a really healthy relationship, and you're able to have open communication with him. And he's doing stuff to educate himself on like your experiences. and you have a sponsor and you have a home group, where I know like before going to AA and NA meetings is something that like really wasn't like interesting to you. Now I know that you go like 3 to 5 times a week, and so you have your group and you have your support there. And so you're working on the third step. What does that look like for you?
The third step is, excuse me, is I think connecting with the people and trying to, I believe.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's what you want it to be, but it's obviously just like working on identifying like what is and isn't in your control. So I think some of that can relate back. Probably what's heightening some of your anxieties right now is like going through that step and the things that weren't in your control in the past and how they might not be in your control in the future. Being able to identify that, and then being able to identify what is in your control. And obviously that is different and looks different for every person. It's no like set like ABC thing. And so for you obviously, and we've talked about like your kids being taken in the past and some of the contributing factors to all of that, and like what that process was like for you. And obviously some of our conversations are going to be focusing on what that might look like in the future when your baby is born, because as we have discussed in this state, when you have your baby, because you're receiving MAT, because you're on Subutex, they will file a report with the department. And then what that whole process is like. They'll assign the investigator, they'll do the investigation, and then depending on that, they'll obviously open the case. And we've obviously talked about with your history how things might be a little bit more fast-tracked or a little bit different than in some other cases. But just going back to that, how have those conversations gone with your sponsor in terms of like being able to identify some of those things that like you can and can't control?
I think with like talking to my sponsor about it, it was re-triggering for me. And I think that's what like really got to my anxiety, because it's like not once did it happen, not twice, it was 3 times that like I've lost all 3 of my kids. And so getting to this step, it's fairly new. Being 6 months sober and like finally taking the next step, which is something that I've been avoiding. And now that I'm at that step, it's really difficult to see that like the things that I don't have control of. And because of that, I feel like I can't really control, even though I've been doing it for 6 months sober, I feel like I really can't control myself because it's happened so many times in the past. And even though like I know I am motivated so much and I have so much healthy support, I feel like it's something that still sits in the back of my mind.
Like what do you mean by that? Like what is something that's still sitting in the back of your mind?
That I might relapse.
Okay.
Yes. And I don't want to relapse. That it's something that I know I stand on, but because it's happened so many times in the past, it's like it's always that one little possibility for me that it could happen.
Yeah.
And that's what like scares me the most. And like like you said, I'm going through that process with the investigator and everything once I do have this baby. It's like re-traumatizing, and it's just a lot of things are just building up for me, and it's just I'm scared that I might fall back into that path again.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things there. So obviously like relapse can be a part of recovery, and what's really important to process, like if that does happen, is like what led up to that. And I think recovery means something different for everybody. And I think obviously just looking and defining, like for you, like what does it mean? And really the important thing is understanding like what led to that relapse. And I think it's different, like if you relapse and it's like a one-time thing and like you go through this process, that's going to be very different than you at 23 trying to get sober not being able to get sober, which led to you relapsing, which just led to you going on essentially like another like binge session, and it led to you getting involved in an unhealthy relationship and experiencing homelessness. And you just need to be able to recognize like where your life is right now and how that's different and how far you have come. And I think changing kind of that negative to the positive self-talk. And obviously having a certain level of anxiety is healthy, and it can be something that can motivate you, but it's when those thoughts become all-consuming, that's when we start to worry. What are some things that have been working or not working for you in terms of being able to manage those kind of like anxious feelings?
I think speaking up on it, that's why I'm here meeting with you and just talking about it, because I am aware of what is going on in my mind right now, and it's not like I want to pick up, you know, drugs right now and like in that state of mind where I used to be, because I was so quick to just be like, my anxiety's heightened, I need to go do this. Right now, it's like my anxiety's heightened, but I definitely don't want to do that. That's the last thing I would ever want to do, especially with being pregnant. So it's like just expressing that is helping me realize that, like, you know, I am going through this. It's something that I can control, which is, you know, reminding me again, I'm on that third step. These are the things that I can control and can handle. And with the support that I have and just speaking up on it, and like validation as well of how much I've, you know, I like accomplished since then.
Yeah, definitely. Have you created a relapse prevention plan, like either on your own accord or with your sponsor? I know that we haven't done one yet, but we've talked about doing one. So, but is that something that you have done like with yourself or with your sponsor?
I haven't yet.
Okay.
Yes.
So maybe for our next session, we can work on doing like a little bit more of like a formal relapse prevention plan.
Okay.
Does that sound okay to you?
It does.
Okay. And then in terms of like self-care, do you have any type of things that you do like throughout the day that like make you feel better, or do you have your own self-care plan or like routine?
Yeah, so for self-care, I, you know, like I've told you, I go to AA and go Al-Anon with Arthur, like a lot of times each week, just to like remind myself of, you were in this place and now you're in this place, and it's helping me realize of the journey that I've gone through, and that I've accomplished so much, and it's because I need that validation with myself. It helps me a lot. Sometimes I do just take some time with myself, and maybe I just read here, maybe journal here, keep my mind busy, and you know, my hands busy, just keeping busy altogether. Because whenever I don't keep busy, I just think of,
you have a lot of racing thoughts that come back.
I have a lot of thoughts that come in. I have negative thoughts, and so
are you journaling at all? I know we spoke about that as like an idea last week, because I know you've been doing a lot of journaling with your AA stuff, but have you been doing journaling with any of your like anxiety stuff, like or anything?
I have, and it's helpful. You know, with things that I can't talk about, not necessarily can't talk about, but not, you know, ready to talk about, and being able to just write it out.
For sure.
It can help me have that weight lifted off of my shoulders, and make me feel more relieved that like that's something that is, you know, not in here but on here on paper.
Yeah, definitely.
And it has helped tremendously with journaling.
Oh, good.
Like I just, you know, journal like one thing a day, just to help me. And there are different type of prompts that I do, which is like for my anxiety, how I feel about, you know, my kids being taken away, difficult things that I am trying to come to terms with. And you know, coming to terms with that, it's taken a toll on me.
Yeah.
Very.
It's really heavy stuff, and I think, like you said, something that's different about it now, obviously, is when that was happening, like, you weren't sober. So your ability to process something when you're not sober is different than your ability to process something than when you are sober. And then you add on the fact that you're pregnant, like, that's a lot of different emotions and a lot of different things that are going on. So I'm really happy to hear that you are journaling. Are you able to talk about these things, like, in your meetings or with your sponsor? Or, like, I know that, some meetings you're obviously kind of just focusing on, like, step work, but have you gone to, like, a meeting that is just, like, all women? Or, like, have you talked about something like that with your sponsor?
I've talked about it with my sponsor, of, like, being surrounded by other women who have gone through this, like, similar things as me. I feel like in the beginning I wasn't all for it, just because it's very re-traumatizing myself. And because I was still in the beginning stage of recovery, I didn't want to do that. And hearing other women and, like, making me fall into that deep dark hole that I was in, especially with the unhealthy relationship that I had with the past boyfriend that I had, and with everything that was going on with my family just not being there, cutting me off. It was just one thing after another for me. And now, like, 6 months later, I'm on the third step. I feel like it is something that I do want to look into, is going to an all-women's group, just to have not only support from them, but also be that support for them as well. Because I know how it's like for that.
And I think you could do that in a couple of different ways. Like, obviously, you could talk to your sponsor about, like, finding an AA meeting, where, like, that's the type of structure that's there. Or I know that your provider, where you get your MAT from, I know that the nurse practitioner there actually works with a clinician, and I don't know how often it is that they meet, but they have a couple of different groups that are just for women, and then they have a couple of other ones that are for, like, new moms. If that's something that you think is going to be helpful, it's worth looking into. If you don't think it's going to be helpful, then don't look into it. But just a suggestion. And then, how are things going, like, with work? Is that causing you, like, any extra stress lately? I know that you said work is sometimes a good, like, distraction and a good outlet for you, because you're taking care of other people, but how has it been lately?
It does keep my mind busy. In a good way. It's keeping me on my feet, because I know later on in the pregnancy I will not be able to be on my feet because it's bad for the baby. It's helping me with that stability, and I feel like stability is what I need in my life, especially with, like, being not in the same position necessarily, because I'm not in that hole again, but, like, being pregnant again and then going through recovery again. It's just, I didn't have that type of job back then, so it's like something stable that I don't want to lose, because I want to be able to support my baby. I want to help Arthur in whatever he needs. I just want to be that person for other people, instead of being the one that's always getting helped with, because I feel like in the past I just felt useless, because people are always reaching out to me to try to help, or telling me that, like, you need help and things like that. So it's nice to know that I can do something in return.
And I think something to take away from that is not only you being able to be that person for other people, but you being able to be that person for yourself. And obviously, it is really important to want to get sober and to be the best version of yourself for somebody else. But I think the most challenging part of that comes with, you have to be that person for you too, and you have to show up for you too. And I think sometimes that is where some of the more challenging parts can come. up because it's very easy to fall in love with your newborn baby who's perfect. Whereas, you know, having that own self-love and that own self-confidence can be way more of a challenge because you can look at yourself and be like, I did all of these things wrong. Whereas you're looking at this baby and it's like, they're just here.
And like, that's how I feel. It's just like, this baby that I'm having is the main thing that is motivating me. It's just, and I think that's why like I get so scared and just have so much anxiety, which, you know, is taking a toll on me and it's taking a toll on them. And so it like, I just can't help like, what if I'm not doing the things that I need to do? Am I in the right place?
Right. Yeah, I think that something we can do, not today, but maybe within the next few sessions, if you're comfortable, is maybe just have some role play sessions where we kind of talk, like I come in and I am like acting as that DHS worker, and you're obviously acting as yourself, and we can kind of go through some different scenarios. That way you can kind of experience it to a certain extent, and then we can kind of talk about the feelings that, you know, come out of that. How does that sound?
I feel like it'd be a new experience.
Okay.
I've been through DHS caseworkers a lot.
Right.
But I wasn't sober when I did it. Of course, I felt like I was just forced to do those things. And, you know, getting my kids taken away from me, like just, I felt like it was their fault, not mine. But, you know, coming to terms with everything, it's difficult, and I want to try my best, whatever it takes for this baby, because I do want to be better for them. And I know, like, going through with AA, it's helping me, but, you know, it's hard to not think you've done this before, though.
Yeah.
You know, failed at it before, though.
But, like, again, let's look at that and let's say, okay, like, sure, that happened in the past, but you have been going to AA for 6 months now. You're doing step work. You've never done step work before. You're on the 3rd step. You have a sponsor. You've never had a sponsor before. You have a partner who's going to Al-Anon. You're in a healthy relationship. You're in therapy. You have a primary care doctor through your MAT provider. You've been doing MAT for a couple of months now as well. You've been doing that regularly. You've been to all of your appointments. You've been to all of your drug screens. You've been to all of your prenatal appointments for the baby. You've been proactive in scheduling them. You and Arthur are renting an apartment. You have a 2-bedroom apartment. You're working. He's working. You're both able to drive. You have transportation. So these are a million things that are all different than your experience in the past. And so I think it's really important for you to see and believe in all of those things, because those are not easy. Like, you know, and especially just being able to do that all right now and maintain it. It's just really important that you do focus on that and stay in that mindset.
That's the validation that I needed. Just to see that, like, it's not, you know, other people can see the success that I've done. But because of the successes that I've done, I'm in a better place. Would I be able to see my other children?
Yeah. I mean, that's not something that I can answer. I mean, I think that's something that you can try to reach out to those different offices about, or if you have any paperwork that kind of like details or outlines anything. I know that with a closed adoption, you wouldn't be able to see them. With an open adoption, you would be able to see them. So it just kind of depends on what that situation was.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just feel like I'm like in a better place right now. And, you know, I do have some regret of what I've done, especially to my own children. And, you know, think of myself before them and having them suffer just because of my choices. And now that I'm in a better state of mind, I just want to reach out to them. And I know that is the next step, is like coming to terms with the people that I've hurt. And I think that's why I'm so stagnant in this third step, because I don't think I'm ready to face that yet. But I do want to in the near future.
Yeah, well, and I think that's the beauty of AA. Like, everyone goes at their own pace, and everyone sets that for themselves. And you have a built-in support to help you through those steps. And I think that you being able to sit here and identify that with me right now is huge, because that's going to be something that you can then focus on, like, with yourself. And so you said, you know, maybe you want to reach out to your kids. Well, maybe you can't do that with them directly, like have a conversation like you and I are having, but you could write them letters. Even if they'll never read them, you could still write them letters. And that way you're still able to express yourself in that way to them. I know it's not exactly the same, but it's still a way for you to communicate.
Yeah, because I am feeling like some type of guilt of not being there for them, but doing it for this child that I have right now.
Yeah.
And it's hard not to have that guilt in me, just because like I have put those three kids through hell because of my own choices and actions. And now that I want to fully get better, I don't want them to resent me for it. And that's all I can feel, is just the pain that like I've caused to them.
Yeah. I mean, let's say maybe they do feel resentful, and obviously that's something that is hurtful, like, to and for you. I think something that we can focus on is, like I said, you have this new baby, and you also have you, and you taking ownership over the things that you have done in the past or have not been able to do in the past, and then just being able to kind of process through that, and just recognize that you aren't that person, and just kind of holding on to all of that is not going to help you move forward in the direction that you are moving forward in.
So, what do you think should be my next steps whenever it comes to dealing with this feeling? Because I know definitely I don't want to go back and be in that hole once again.
Sure.
But I just can't help to think, because, you know, the amount of times I validate myself and other people validate me, are there any other things that I can do to help other than just, you know, journaling or going to AA or anything like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's up to you. I think that, you know, doing something, an activity that makes you kind of feel good or feel happy or feel relaxed. You could watch a TV show or read, or you can take like a relaxing bath, or you could try to do some volunteer work. Like maybe you want to do Big Brothers Big Sisters, or I know you work as a CNA, but maybe you're interested in volunteering at a different nursing home. Something that you're giving back to other people in a positive way. Or you and Leo can do something together, take a walk when the weather is nicer out, not when go for a swim, go for a run, go for a bike ride. It kind of just depends on you and what you like to do and what you think will make you feel better in that moment. So we can come up with like not necessarily like a formal self-care plan, but we can kind of go through like some different options. Like when I'm feeling this way, these are some things that I can do like to calm down. These are some people that I can reach out to. Is that something that would be interesting?
Yeah, like I feel like with everything that's like written out like that would help me.
Okay, for sure.
Just because I am that type of person that I Like, I want to be able to, I'm a visual person. I want to be able to just see and look at these things and being able to be like, okay, yeah, I'm feeling this way. What should I do? I'm feeling that way. What can I do? And who are the people that I can reach out to? And I feel like, you know, doing like a non-formal like self-care thing would help tremendously, just because my anxiety always goes out.
Yeah. For right now, I know that last week we talked about different like breathing techniques for your anxiety. Have you been working on those at all?
I have, but then I have not.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It just all depends on like how I'm feeling that day. One day I'll be feeling great with all of my accomplishments. The next day I can feel guilt, shame, and just, you know, wanting to just not do anything, not reach out to anybody. So it just really goes back and forth for me.
When you're in kind of some of those more negative moods, do you feel safe like reaching out to Leo and reaching out, I don't know where Leo just came from, reaching out to Arthur and reaching out to your sponsor?
Yeah, and with being with Arthur and speaking up on it, because, you know, he is going through the same thing with going to Al-Anon, and, you know, him being there and, you know, reminding me of how far we both came and where we're at right now, and that we have this child together, and, you know, he's trying to be there in any possible way that he can, and for the baby, and to remind me to not stress out, because it can take a toll on the baby, and it can hurt me as well in the process.
Sure.
So yeah.
Okay, so I think we have some good things that we're going to work on for our next session. So in the meantime, I want you to kind of think about what our self-care plan can look like, what our relapse prevention plan can look like, and then we'll get working on those, and then we can or we cannot, it's up to you. If you do want to do some of those role play scenarios, we can do them. We don't have to, just a suggestion. Or we can do them later down the line. Right now you're only 3 months pregnant, so if that's something that we want to bring up again in the past, or in the future, that's something we can bring up in the future.
Okay.
Is there anything else that you need from me right now? Is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap
with
up?
the women's group that we were talking about, I really did want to do that, and just to see how that is. How long would that be? How long would that be to like try to find them, or where would I go to try to find these groups?
Yeah, so there's, like I said, there's the one that your clinic has, so you can reach out to the nurse practitioner at your clinic if you're interested in doing that one. You can connect with your sponsor, see if they recommend any ones. If not, you can just do a Google search of like women's AA groups. I will look at some of my own as well, and then next week I'll come back and we can kind of compare that information and kind of just see which one is going to be the best fit. And it's like similar to your to your home group now. Like, you went to a couple of different meetings in a couple of different places before you kind of found the place that was like solid enough for you. And I know throughout the week you go to other ones, but you do have like your home-based group, so we can kind of explore that with the women's group as well. And if you want, you can ask your sponsor to go to those meetings with you for the first few ones, if that's something she's comfortable doing. I know that she goes to your home group with you, so you do that. Does that sound okay?
That does sound okay, just because like it's helping me realize that I'm not in this alone. I think like meeting with you today really helped me try to understand like there are people out there rooting for me, and with all the connections that you're helping me with, it's just helping me work towards that goal, which is be the best mom that I can be and be the best person that I can be.
Yeah, just being the best you for you too, because like I said, at the end of the day, it's you who's there for you. Okay. All right, so we will see each other same time next week?
Yes, same time next week.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.